Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. My dad will be so grateful. See you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.
Welcome to the Mindful Fire podcast, a show about crafting a life you love and making work optional, using the tools of mindfulness, envisioning, and financial independence. I'm your host, Adam Coelho, and I'm so glad you're here. Each episode of the Mindful Fire podcast explores these 3 tools through teachings, guided meditations, and inspiring interviews with people actually living them to craft a life they love. At its core, Mindful Fire is about creating more awareness and choice in your life. Mindfulness helps you develop self-awareness to know yourself better and what's most important to you by practicing a kind, curious awareness. Envisioning is all about choosing to think big about your life and putting the power of your predicting brain to work to create the life you dream of. And financial independence brings awareness and choice to your financial life, empowering you to make your vision a reality by getting your money sorted out and ultimately making work optional. And here's the best part. You don't have to wait until you reach financial independence to live out your vision. Mindful Fire is about using these tools to craft that life now on the path to financial independence and beyond. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Let's jump into today's episode. In today's episode, I'm joined by my friend Colm Dolan, a former Googler and the founder of Publift, an ad tech business that helps online publishers build sustainable revenue streams. He's an ad ops veteran and a sports fanatic with a passion for self-improvement and creating a better life situation for all. In this episode, you'll learn how his company, Publift, came to be and how it all started from a conversation that he and I had 7 years ago that kicked off his entrepreneurial and mindfulness journey. I've been blown away by what he's been able to achieve since then, and I'm really excited to have him on the episode to share with you today. In this episode, Colin and I explore the idea that entrepreneurship is actually a spiritual path, and that there's so much learning and growth to be had from the challenges and ups and downs that come with being an entrepreneur. And Colin shares his thoughts on why it's so important to build structure into your day, and why bookending his days with meditation and finding moments of mindfulness throughout his day allow him to deal with the ups and downs and the challenges that come from being an entrepreneur and running a business. And we learn how Colin is able to build this structure in his life, even while building a business and raising 2 boys and having a wife at home as well. And we hear how Colin has brought these ideas of mindfulness and personal growth and improvement into everything he does at his company, and how he empowers his employees to learn, grow, have fun, and to become the best versions of themselves. Colin also shares his thoughts on financial independence and how, to be honest, he's not really that focused on financial independence, but rather focused on building a company where everyone can learn, grow, and have fun. And Colin shares his top advice for those getting started with meditation and mindfulness. And he also shares his thoughts for those pursuing financial independence. And you'll hear the advice that Colin would give to his younger self. I really enjoyed this episode with Colin, and I hope that you enjoyed as well. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome to the podcast, Colin.
Thank you very much, Adam. It's absolutely fantastic to be on this podcast with you, and I'm very inspired by all you've done in the last few years since we worked together at Google many moons ago.
Yeah, that does feel like a really long time ago, doesn't it?
Does indeed. The original young fella.
Oh, that's right. Some good times we had. So I'd love to start the podcast by having you share with the audience a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to in the world.
Yeah, thanks very much, Adam. Yeah, I'm a founder. I'm an ad tech founder. I am a dad, 2 young boys, 1.5 and 4 years of age, which keep me very busy. I suppose my journey really has actually involves you. When you visited Sydney, Australia, where I live at the moment, your part inspired me on the road down meditation and in starting a business. I think it's about 7 years ago now since you were actually here. And at the time, I wasn't enjoying the job I did. And I always thought about having a startup where I know there's a problem in the ecosystem, in the publisher ecosystem, but you always need a push sometimes, and you push from some of your friends as well. So I've been working as an entrepreneur for nearly 7 years now and built a successful business that has a global outreach and a global audience. So I suppose actually the exact same time I started meditating with your help as well. So I owe a depth of gratitude to you. And two things that are quite intertwined over the last couple of years that I really think an entrepreneurial journey is very much a spiritual journey as well, because it's a very hard route to go down, and it tests your mental resolve, tests your skills. You've a lot of ups, you've a lot of downs. The ups are never as good and the downs are never as bad, but it's a very much roller coaster ride that you really need to have severe mental focus. And the thing about starting a business is that you not only do it for yourself, but you're doing it for a lot of other people. It's a big responsibility that a lot of my team have mortgages, they have young kids, and if you make bad decisions, it's going to impact on them. So there's a lot of constant worry and constant reinforcement that it's going to all work out. So all the attributes of meditation and mindfulness and being in the present moment and giving everything to your team is so crucial. And I feel really thankful and blessed that it's tested the depth of my character like no end, being an entrepreneur. And it's a hard route to go down, but with a lot of problems, you create a lot of growth and a lot of learning about yourself. And I think as well, when you go down that journey, you get influenced by a lot of similar people that have gone down that journey. So it's like when you hear that quote a lot, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with. So if you started hanging around with other entrepreneurs or other people seeking financial freedom, that puts you on another stratosphere in terms of you're questioning things a lot more, and you're questioning, why are you on this planet? Why are you on this earth? Like the way you do your mission statement and all that kind of stuff in business. You also do a mission statement nearly for yourself. What are your values? When you're doing values for a business, you're doing values on yourself. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And sometimes when I work in a corporate life, I may not think about that because I'm just thinking about punching in numbers and going home and spending time, and you shut off. Whereas having your own business, you're always thinking about, how can I have more impact? How can I have more impact on the customer? But how can I have more impact on myself as well and to the overall world? So yeah, that's what I'm currently doing, Adam, at the moment. I'm really interested in having an impact on people's lives, or really focusing on our customers as well and have an impact on their lives. And I suppose I'm really motivated by an obsession with self-improvement to improve the life situation of myself, for my team members, to improve my consciousness, to improve every aspect of health and being, really, and to have just a happy, fruitful life, really.
So thinking back to when you started the business, it's so awesome to me to see what you've created in the 7 years since we had that dinner together when I was in Sydney. We were hanging out with your girlfriend, now wife. Neither of us had kids, and we're just enjoying some Portuguese chicken and talking about life and how I was getting really into meditation. And just to see what you did, I think 3 weeks later, you quit your job and started this company. And it's become an award-winning company, getting all sorts of awards for innovative companies and the workplace that you've created. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about that journey, right? What was it like when you were first starting the business? And as you progressed, like, how did you lean on your mindfulness practice to build it into what it is now?
Yeah, I suppose to give you a background there as well, like, I think you were the final kind of push I really needed, because before I started the business, I was working at another startup, which they lost their Series B round investment, and I needed to get out of there. The business was winding up, and I had a time period. But I questioned myself, having gone from a corporate business like Google. I spent a lot of time at Google, and then another business in Australia, Telstra. And then I went to a startup, and I really failed miserably. I couldn't sell to anyone. And what we were selling, it was an ad tech kind of product as well. And my mental resolve was gone. My confidence is at an all-time low. I said to myself, do I need to go back into the comforts of corporate? So I remember vividly going for interviews with Twitter, with Facebook, with Criteo, and I couldn't get an interview for love nor money. Like, I couldn't get past that stage. Obviously, I had good on my resume. It looked good that I worked for Google and that kind of stuff, but I just couldn't. I had no self-confidence at the time. And I was literally about to just go, oh, maybe I'll just go home, or I had got this new girlfriend at the time, and you came and said, yeah, why don't you do this? Because I had always in the back of my mind of maybe starting something, and you gave me the confidence to just give it a go. But I was at a low ebb, and I just had nothing to lose. And that's the kind of key factor in anything of this. And I think as well, a lot of people that go starting businesses, it's very hard when you are in the comforts, you know this well, in the comforts of Google, in the comforts of these corporate places, it makes you very hard to leave. You always got your stock plan vesting next year. They might give you a few more. They might give you a promotion. And then you're thinking job security, all this kind of stuff. And if I still had all that kind of things in place, maybe I wouldn't have made the leap. So it's very much a circumstance kind of stuff. But getting back to your question then, I just thought I'd give you a bit of a background to what made me make that decision. It was tough. The first 6 months were very tough because you're in our apartment. We rented out a room in my apartment to my buddy, and he came in and stayed with us for 6 or 9 months. My wife had a good job at the time, so she was supporting us, but I maxed out my credit card 6 months. I remember having 3 clients for 6 months. I got 1 client and then it snowballed to a second client. And I wouldn't say it was a long time taking off, but once I started getting a bit of traction, there was a problem that needed to be solved. And I got a lot of energy from that. And I got a lot of energy from maybe winning those couple of clients at the start. But it was, looking back on it, an incredible time, an incredible test of character, because you've got your family concerned about you going out, starting a business yourself. You've got your friends thinking, oh, this person has built up a good image. He's worked at Google and now he's just doing a kind of startup, and your character gets questioned. So you question yourself and you say, have I got the appetite for this at all? What am I trying to really do here? And then you start getting a small bit of wins and a small bit of success. And then it's like, okay, I think there's an opportunity to build something here, to build a business. And then at that stage, later on in that year, I had a really good relationship with my business partner at this stage, but he was a friend of mine from Google back then. He worked in the Dublin office with me, and I reached out to him and actually met him in Bali in August of, when is that, 2014 maybe at this stage. And I said, I've started this business in Australia. It's going pretty well, but I need you over here because I can't do this on my own. I was good at sales and negotiation, but not very good from the technical aspect of what we needed to do. So once I got commitment from him, he moved over in March of the following year. So then I remember at Christmas time that before that, I had about 5 or 6 or maybe even 7 clients at that time. So there was a business model there, and it could be successful if the right things went at that time. So all those times, really, I think meditation and mindfulness, I'm not too sure at that time, was I doing that much of it, to be honest with you. It was all about keeping my head above water, and you're so focused about just building the business side of the business and making a financial model that would work I was just about scrimping on paying for daily activities and paying your rent and doing all that kind of stuff. But after that, I think it's when Tobin came over, we hired our first employee, we got an office. And that was around 2015. And I had been running the business myself. And then we rebranded and came up with the name Publift around August 2015. So that was a very exciting time when we had, I think, about 2-3 other employees at the time, maybe 2 employees at the time. And it was around that time really that you started to say, well, what is this business about? What am I doing this for? And you start to read about getting your mission statement and your values. And then I would say then the real spiritual journey for me started in being an entrepreneur, because reasons you become an entrepreneur is because you have a problem to solve. I think I was at desperation level, but a lot of entrepreneurs start a business because they're pissed off with something and they want a solution to it. And it could be a personal solution for something that it just really annoys them. And you have to really be very annoyed before starting a business, especially getting away from the comforts. But then in starting the values of the business, why are you doing it? You have to share your vision to the rest of the team. You have to try and convince people to join your business. Why should they join your business rather than Canva down the road that is given much more salary? So you have to say to them, we want to build this platform. We want to have this many clients. We want to help customers because they're really in need of this. At that journey, and then you start reading some business books, and the business books are very much comes from a spiritual kind of landscape, I would say. And it's when you're reading those business books and then you're doing a bit of meditation on the side and you see the similarities, and then you say, what I realized then my goal in life was not about making money, really. I don't really care about making money. I'm more motivated by making an impact on people's lives. And then you look at some books and say, okay, think about when you die. Sounds kind of morbid, but when you die and you have your eulogy written out, what do you want to be known to be? And I suppose when I think about those kind of things, I want to have a big impact on the world. I want a big impact on people's lives. I'm often referred to as a sponge. I'll take stuff in and learn, and then I'll regurgitate it and teach people a lot about what I've learned. So that's the biggest thing for young people in the business is I'll teach them more about what has worked for me from experiences about, mindfulness had made a big impact in my life. I think it could really help you. Visualizations have made a big impact in my life. This is how I see it could help you. So all of those things have intertwined with starting the business, really. And that has led to the focus within the business and the culture within the business. And I suppose it stems as well from when I was working at Google or other corporates, and that I knew what I didn't like and didn't want the business to be about. I wanted people to have autonomy to make decisions and a culture where people could grow and learn and could have fun as well. I think it was crucial. And that kind of was influenced. Again, as I said earlier, you start hanging around with people who are entrepreneurial, who you're getting advice from people on how to run businesses. And then you realize that some people have different goals than you. And you just go, I'm on my own kind of journey here in the business. And it's the same with life. You're on your own kind of journey. Something that works for someone else is not going to necessarily work for you. But it's having the balls to make those decisions as well, to just go, actually, maybe this is a lifestyle business I want. Maybe it's not. It's up and down. It's like I could have, I refer to myself as a walking contradiction sometimes. I could have one idea maybe 6 months ago, said, definitely sell the business. Yeah, just make as much money as possible. I'm sick of it. 2 days later, go, I love this business. I never want to sell this business. So it's up and down like that. And I suppose it's like your life. In a way, you have thought processes that say, I want this journey, I want that journey. And it's really just figuring yourself out. And that's what I love about running the business and doing that, because I'm so grateful. It's given me the opportunity to test my resolve and really find out what I want in life.
So, Colin, I really like this idea that you mentioned of the path of entrepreneurship as a spiritual path. Tell me, is there one or a couple of experiences that really brought that idea to your mind and where you really saw the similarities in those two things?
Yeah, so many examples, really. I think some examples dealing with people. We've been in a situation where we've made a lot of mistakes. We've hired some wrong people for the business, and that affects us, but it also affects the person as well. So our recruitment process wasn't robust enough, wasn't the right way. And we hired some bad people. And with that, you sometimes have to move these people on. It's the best interest of the business. And it's probably best for them as well. You don't want to see people struggle. But in doing that, I remember the first person that we had to essentially fire. And it was a big ordeal. There was many nights of worry and anticipation of this because you feel really bad. And this tests your mental resolve. So sometimes there's trouble sleeping. So you need to have something. You need to have your spiritual journey, whatever that may be, whether it's meditation, whether it's playing pool, table tennis, playing the piano, whatever that is, or going for a walk in the evening. You need to follow a process and you need to have a structure to your day. Like at the moment, the structure of my day is really get up, play with the kids, get them ready for they go to daycare, or get them ready, and then I have my meditation time for half an hour, and then I cycle to work to the office normally. Then at nighttime it's play with the kids and do all that kind of stuff and have a bit of downtime, meditation, and go to bed. And if I break that cycle, if some nights you're out and do things like that, which happens, you can then go down that stream of thinking too much about things. And during the last few years running the business, you have to really improve and balance all those different parts of your life, because if you don't, things will consume you. And I've learned the hard way that all of those things, like just maybe firing someone like that, it consumes you. And you get into endless streams of thinking, what's going to happen to the rest of the team? What are they going to think? What's going to happen to that person? Are they going to have a bad reaction? Is it a bad decision? And if you have those kind of things going on in your brain all the time, it's not very good, because it's how you come across. The team see you being worried, the team see you being vulnerable. And that's fine. I think it's very important to have a vulnerable kind of stage, but it can work against you that you're not performing at your best. So those type of situations are so important that you double down on the mindfulness strategy. And again, there's all those things that come up from a strategic point of view. Maybe there's a new competitor takes your clients. Like we lost a client last week that I've been working with for 6 years, and I was devastated. And again, I'm better. I've seen the improvements in me, better able to manage it now. I haven't thrown the toys out of pram and gone mental. I've actually been calm and said, what can we learn from this? What can we learn? This is a great opportunity to learn. Whereas previously I would have went crazy and maybe blamed someone. So again, that is testing your resolve and testing your mental side. And every business book I've read, the famous ones, How to Win Friends and Influence People. There's a lot of different kind of business books, the sales books recently I've read. It's all goes back to the fundamentals of consciousness and mindfulness. It's being present in the moment. Listen to the person you're speaking with, being totally there with that person. And then it goes back to the goals and the settings that you have in the business, and goes into laws of attraction, visualization. These things will happen for you if you look at them. And I think the big thing that I've tried to really work on is that it's all going to work out in the end, and just have that in the back of my mind. You have so many setbacks in being an entrepreneur. Every week there's a setback. Every week there's a landmine around the corner, and it's your ability to be able to master those landmines. And it's a real struggle. It's still a constant struggle. But if you don't have structures in place that allow you to stop that constant thinking, because it can consume you, and it has consumed me in the past, probably will again, but it's just about trying your best to let it not.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It is all about coming back again and just realizing that, even if you've developed some sort of capacity of resilience, of mindfulness, it's a lifelong process, right? Like you're going to find yourself getting stressed out or overwhelmed or short-tempered, right? It happens to me all the time. I'll literally get up from meditation, go upstairs, and my wife will say something to me that triggers me, and I'll react, even though I was just meditating, right? And so I think it's important to realize.
I've been the same. Yeah, I've been the same, and I can understand that. And I think that's the thing I've noticed, is that you said to yourself, right, I'll put the meditation in, but then you need to practice the mindfulness during the day. You need to, and we go into fight or flight mode. If someone like your wife does something to you like that, or like some colleague says something to you that tricks it off, you need to be able to just go breathe and take 5 minutes and just go, actually. And at the end of the day, everyone is trying their best. Everyone is doing the best in this world. And if you have that kind of attitude, it's really important. And it's again going back to the attitude of which I really struggle with, because I have this obsessive nature to improve all the time. And I think I have this things, this is the way the world should be. It should be lined up this way. And I find it very hard to understand that this is the way it is, and you just have to deal with it. So having things in place to help you do that is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like the point you make about having that structure to your day as a support system for building that mindfulness, building that resilience that helps you throughout your day. And I'm wondering, having two small kids, how have you managed to do that? Because I found since my son Carter was born, it's been extremely difficult to keep that routine steady.
I think it's all about priorities. And I'm just after coming out of it now because our youngest Luke is a year and a half, and it's getting a bit easier, because before that there was a lot of up during the night, and not that I was up that much during the night. My good wife does that most of the time. But it's just about making sure that your mindfulness strategy is the number one priority that you have. And you can't take too much on. And in a working environment, when you're taking too much on and going from meeting to meeting and being busy all the time, it creates this, and from my experience, kind of constant adrenaline. And you're doing deals, you're making sure someone is happy, you're hiring someone, you're doing all these kind of things, and you're going from one to another. There is zero downtime. So then when you get home, there is just like, okay, I have to go to a different frequency, to family frequency. And that's very difficult, to go from this frequency down to that frequency, or whatever. I don't fully understand, but that's the way I look at it. And you're trying to be present with your kids, but then you're thinking, oh, is that deal going to close? Is that person going to sign? Is that customer, are they happy now? Oh, I wonder if I've done that differently. But if my calendar during the day, if there's time to refocus and clear your head a small bit without that constant meeting, is very important. Like, that's the most crucial thing, I would say, is to not let it build up. And even small things, like you go to the toilet and the natural thing is to bring your phone. Oh, what can I check on the toilet when I'm in the toilet? It's some email or something like that. So the strategies I have are, I don't have any social media. The only thing I use is LinkedIn. I don't have any email or work stuff on my phone. So I try to stay away from that. And I'm trying to be a bit more mindful during the day. Like, if I have a spare 2 minutes, even going to the toilet or something like that, just have a few deep breaths and just let the buildup of energy and adrenaline dissipate, and you become a bit more centered. And that's so hard. That is really very hard. And it's a constant battle. And I think the phone definitely is a constant struggle of mine. Some weekends I don't touch my phone and have a great weekend. And it's hard because then some people are trying to contact you or different things like that. But when you don't have that as your kind of crutch, if you're staying present with your kids, you just have to, in answering to your question, you just have to block a lot of things out of your life and be happy with that. Like, I try and not watch the news too much because I don't have that much influence on all it, especially the world at the moment. Is just a lot of worry that builds up in you, and you start to get angry at the world, and you start to get, oh, it should be this way, it shouldn't be that way. It's like, there's not much I can do about it, and that is the way it is. And sometimes that makes conversations with people easier or more interesting, because you're asking, oh, what's going on in the world? And you just get educated from different people. And you can only do a few things right as well. I suppose the one thing I always think is health is very important. So I eat very well. Maybe fitness hasn't been as good with the kids, but again, it's about making headspace the priority, and try and get as little as you can into your head. Like, definitely not the smartest tool in the shed. So I try and limit the amount of information I have coming in. That means not being as connected in the world. Not the social media has worked wonders for me personally. And it's just from my experience, the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't really been on Facebook or Twitter, those kind of social media, because I just think it's more influx of information that I need. But it has to be a priority, and you have to really say that the rewards you're getting from having a clear headspace and a healthy mind far outweigh anything else that you can do, because everyone wants the best for their children. And the best thing I can have for my children is that I am present and there with them. Because I've experienced when I'm beside my phone and checking my phone, and when you have your son say to you, oh, get off your phone, daddy, you'll put down your phone if your kid says that to you. And I've experienced that, and it's not a good way to be. So I try, and there's being there with your kids, and there's being really there. So you have to try and really focus for me, try and really be there. But it's easier said than done. And sometimes I was out for dinner on Friday night and had a couple of glasses of wine, and the next day I definitely stayed up till 12 o'clock, was up at 6. I just didn't get enough sleep, and you're a bit ratty and you're not as well there. So sometimes you fall off the edge a bit, and not going too crazy, but it definitely affects you. It affects you the next day. But I think that's what I'm working on myself is like, that's a bit of a poor excuse to just say, oh, I didn't get enough sleep and had a few glasses of wine, so my head isn't feeling that good. So I'll just naturally not be that present. But it's going past those kind of times and trying to be as present as you can in those difficult times that make the difference. Because there's plenty of times I've had very little sleep. I've had 2 hours sleep and I've gone into work and had a fantastic day at work just because I'll focus and knuckle down.
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. In kind of a couple things that stood out to me. First is just how you've prioritized that time to practice meditation, both at the beginning and at the end of the day. And even finding those 2 minutes here and there throughout the day, it sounds like you really think about that as like a reset or kind of like a flushing out of the buildup of information, of stress, of worry, of needing, right? And just using that as like a flushing out of the system. Is that kind of what you were saying?
Yeah, 100%. And look, I am no angel here, Adam. This doesn't work out every day for me. Every day is a new day. Especially, I think it's only been the last 2 months where I've been pretty vigilant on the 1 hour per day meditation. And I've also been doing a couple of meditation courses. I think when you've gone over the last like 6 or 7 years, my meditation journey started out from a very low base and continued for a very low base for a good while, sporadic meditation. But then as you're getting better, it's very interesting to understand the theory and the theory about the chakras and theory about the mind versus yourself and being a witness and all that kind of good stuff that get you on to the next level. Because then you think you're getting a bit of a psychology degree and just finding out more about yourself and finding out more about even your childhood and your upbringing and what people would say to you and say, oh, you should be doing this, you should get a college education, you should do this, you should do that. And it's the parent versus child in you that's the constant battle. But it's just understanding that and walking down the street saying to yourself, oh, I'm thinking now. Okay, just being able to understand that you're thinking now is massive progress than personally where I was a few years ago. But getting back to your question, really, it's not, I try to do it every day, the hour meditation. Sometimes it doesn't work out, especially at the weekends where naturally I think psychologically, sometimes you eat a bit worse. I know I do myself. You maybe just go, oh, it's the weekend. I don't have to do the meditation. And even this weekend, I didn't do any meditation. And this morning, I did a 30-minute one and it was definitely not as good as previously, but very good to do it. And you get back into it again. But you always have these little hurdles that you're trying to improve and increase. And I think taking the couple of minutes each day to between meetings or something like that is something I'm nowhere near there, because there's a lot of days where I just forget totally about doing that. But it definitely is. I know when I do it, and it's sometimes importantly when you get in that fight or flight mode, if you get in an argument with someone, I'll notice it myself. I'll just go, oh, actually, yeah, I've learned something here. I know how to deal with this now. And you just go, okay, take a step back. And that's at those moments you get so much confidence in yourself and you go, wow, I've made incredible strides here that I'm able to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really powerful when you start to just notice the thoughts, notice the story that's going through your head all the time, right? Like I really resonated a lot with what you were saying about the way that things should be, right? Like there's some right way that things should be. And it's either I'm not doing it that way or the world is not that way. And so if only it was that way, everything would be great. So I have thought a lot about that. And meditation has really helped me to notice that story that I have. And that there's like, I'm explaining myself in my own head. I'm like explaining myself to be like, look, I'm doing it the right way. And just noticing that gives me a degree of freedom, right? I'm observing and I don't need to be completely bought in and believe every single thing I think. And that gives me a lot of freedom to look at things that happen, right? I gave the example earlier of I'll be sitting in meditation and come upstairs and then get triggered by my wife or something that happens with my son or whatever. I have a tendency to get pretty defensive when something happens. I'm like, no, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. But even when I react very quickly, I realize that's not who I want to be, right? That's not how I should have reacted, right? And I'll go and I'll say, look, sorry, I was being a jerk. Like 5 minutes later, that would have taken me like 2 weeks before if I even was willing to acknowledge it, right? And so just that type of self-awareness, both in the moment, but also just like overall of like, how am I showing up? Is that how I want to be showing up? And just checking in and trying to keep that in alignment is constant work, but also quite cool when I start to find times that it does happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think about not being too hard on yourself as well, and just see the mini kind of things that you're improve on, and see how are you now versus this time last year, even, or this time last month, to see those small kind of gains. And there's times when you'll go back into being not there or in your thinking brain, but it's about not being too hard on yourself as well, I think, and just taking it day by day. It's a new day today, and you can't do anything about the past anyway, so you might as well just focus on the present and how you show.
Yeah, totally agree. That's a really great story, and I really like how you talk about finding your own values, right? Developing self-awareness over what you care about, what your purpose is, and what your values are, so that you can move your life in that direction. I'm curious as to how that kind of came about for you, and if there are any specific practices that you'd recommend to the audience to start thinking about that in their own life.
Yeah, sure. I think it's very hard when you're working in a 9 to 5 job and you potentially have kids and you potentially have other requirements to actually get a bit of time to think. And it goes back to the life we live in at the moment, where a lot of people are constantly checking social media, checking the news, and you don't actually take a step back and to really think. In starting the business, when you have to create a set of values that you abide by, it gets you time to think and step back. And I can't remember what book I was reading at the time or what influenced me, but it was basically like Googling the values of businesses and how they came about doing this. So it wasn't any rocket science. But then it goes back to like, what are your real values as a person? And then it goes back, for me, it went back to my childhood. Like my parents ran a bed and breakfast in the west of Ireland. The values that they had, I remember vividly, my dad, he could have overcharged someone by £2 and he would have drove 30 miles to give the money back. These are transparency and doing the right thing, and constantly times of customer service when someone would be up at maybe 12 o'clock and they wouldn't be in time for breakfast, and my dad would make them breakfast anyway and just be totally nice about it because he's the nicest person in the world. But these are things that is ingrained in you, and it comes out when you're starting a business like this, and you really want to focus on that. And then you have some great young people like yourself, Adam. When you started at Google, I really wanted you to develop into being a great person, first of all. And it's the same with the young people here in the business. I just want them to learn, have fun, and grow. And if that's a pub lift, great. If it's not, great. The number one focus is for people to grow. And practically when you go through that, you get like a lot of energy from it, and you get so much enthusiasm into the business that you're like, oh, we can create a real difference here. And if I can learn more about what's good in life and trying to make people happy and enjoying the craftsmanship of the work rather than the end result. When you look at a carpenter and how they make something and how they fine tune it, like, a big thing for me is efficiency. Like, I love being efficient in everything we do in the business, but home life. And it's about, like, I want people to work 9 to 5 maximum, less if possible, because you get to spend more time with your friends. You spend more time with your family, more time doing hobbies rather than, having to work. But I found work was an ability for me to be able to bring out my spiritual teaching to other people, or bring out my values and if my purpose in life was to have a really big impact in the world and help people improve themselves and live happier, healthier lives. I've had a lot of mental health issues in our family. Like a cousin of mine committed suicide at 25, which is so sad. And it's just like, he was a really good friend of mine as well. And you just see how people suffer. And if there's any platform like this, even our discussion now, if there's any platform that invigorates someone and says, look, I can have an impact in the world, or I can do that, or I can help people out in some kind of way, then we're doing a great job, because mental health is so important. And we're seeing it these days that people are really suffering at the moment. And it's going back to that structure of the day and having those things in place. And like, we're lucky enough, we're back in the office here the last couple of months. And it's really been great because we've a lot of young people that like being part of a family, like being part of a bit of a tribe. And that's very important. Those social aspects as well are really important. And it's the things, the checking in with people. How are you doing today? Are you okay? Are you getting enough rest? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you doing exercise this week? Yeah, don't worry about that, client. Make sure you're getting exercise. I may be wrong. I'm really focused about making sure that people have the right tools to go about that. And if the values I have in the business, like we've 11 values in the business, one of them is consciousness, healthy headspace. Another is efficiency, family spirit, these kind of things. But they're all, I think, trying to improve as a person. And that resonates with the customer. That's going to make more revenue, save time for your customer, us being more reliable to the customer. And it's about having autonomy to improve a process, for instance. It talks about craftsmanship. If we're building a kind of product, that they're building the best product fit for the customer. It mightn't be the best product, but the customer is gaining the most out of it. And it's like that. If you have that customer first kind of mindset, how can you have the most impact on the customer? You can do that for yourself, really, because you're like, how can I have the most impact on my life? And it's about having that headspace to be able to think and really go, well, where is my life going? What do I want to do? Because anything is possible. You can achieve anything in your life if you just focus on it, really.
Yeah, I really like this idea of being clear on your values and really infusing all the actions that you take with those values, right? It sounds like you have those values well agreed upon within the company and everyone's bought into that. How do you check in to see if you and your team are living those values?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think one of the things I remember having a discussion with my friend about a year and a half ago, and I was saying, like, look, I'm down the spiritual path and I really love it. And I think I can have more impact on the world, like doing something else. Maybe I should quit Publift and do this kind of stuff. And he said, why don't you just intertwine the two of them? So that's what I've done. I've said, let's just, and as we get bigger, hopefully it might provide a platform where I could be an Oprah telling Oprah how I'm trying to do this in business and how I'm trying to impact people's lives as well and for the greater good. So maybe there's an opportunity to do that. But in creating the values, we have gone through a lot of iterations of values. The latest one was about 3 months ago during the lockdown, actually, in Sydney, that we refocused the business and we said, look, what are we doing here? What's the value we're creating for our client? And what do we want as a team? So the values were created by the team. It wasn't me. It was actually, we did about a 2-month intensive 2-hour session a week where we discussed all of these values and put them down on paper and discussed them. Started off with 20 or 30 and whittled down to 11. And then from that, they've really started to intertwine in the business. And we actually our one-on-one template now uses these 11 principles and saying the number 1 is delivering service. And we're, how have we delivered service in the last couple of weeks? Where would you see you're at with that? Have you a healthy mindset? So it's driving that accountability within the business is very important. And we're incorporating it now into 360-degree feedbacks. And so it's all based on the values in the business. And then when decisions, and this is practical, when decisions have to be made about a certain product or something happens with the customer, we make a mistake and it makes the customer decrease their revenue by a couple of grand. Like, what does our values say? Our values, we totally have trust and transparency in our DNA. So that means we tell them exactly what it is, and then we just go, I think this is the right thing to do. We'll give the money back or we do whatever, but it all goes back to that stems from the values in the business. And values to me in the business aren't just things written down. They have to just be like, it all goes back to practical examples. And we've done that in our weekly team meetings as well. We've given examples of where we've shown our values, or we did something on vulnerability or something like that, and went around the room and tell me about a time when you've been vulnerable. So all those kind of things, you have to live and breathe it. And that's my biggest role I have, is to always make sure people are aware of that. And that's the problem with scaling up the business as well. We've got about 25 in the business now. We're probably going to go expand into Europe next year and get more people into the business then. But it's about how we do that. And it's a big kind of challenge. But again, it goes back to giving people autonomy and giving people the ability to say, oh, should we change our values? Are the values correct? And be constantly asking that. And as well as that, I'm pretty proud that we implemented profit share this quarter for the first time. And that has given people pure autonomy in the business, that they can go, should we spend this money here on something that's going to impact our bottom line, and all those kind of things. People can see why the values are in place, because one of the values is building a sustainable business model. Is, can we go down some other product avenue that is going to sustain our business and sustain the lives of our customers? Because we've got over 230 customers now. So we have to make sure that our business is intact and stay at cutting edge technology for them to thrive. And our mission statement and vision is basically to allow publishers to thrive and survive for a long time. So it's built into that.
Yeah. So it sounds like the values are really in everything you do. And I've been trying to align myself with my values. I'm pretty clear on my values, personal values, learning and growing, creating opportunity for myself, my family, and others, building connection between myself and others, and by bringing others together. Those are the things that give me immense energy and that I want to be spending my time on. And I've been trying to build the habit of really checking in and seeing how much I am or am not doing that in my work, in my life. And there are many ways that I am. And then there are many areas where I could be doing it more. And so I really like that you have that within your one-on-one template, within your team meetings, the way that you make decisions, the way that you incorporate the team in making those decisions, and really giving them ownership, literally with profit sharing and figuratively with the values and the whole thing, to really embody and live those. And so I think that's really cool. Another thing I really like and would love to hear a little bit more about is how you think about using this entrepreneurial path to develop and create the impact that you want to create on the world, right? Because I've had this thought a lot as well. As you mentioned, I am very attuned to the comforts of corporate America. I have gotten quite comfortable. And many times in my career, I thought that I needed to leave Google and I needed to leave a corporate safe job and take a risk as an entrepreneur to truly make an impact and to develop into the person I wanted to be. And to some degree, I really still do want to be an entrepreneur, but I've found that I am an entrepreneur. I don't need to wait until some future time when I quit my job to be an entrepreneur. I can be an entrepreneur right now. And I can live in alignment with my values right now within my job at Google, with this podcast, which I can do on the side. And that's entrepreneurial in itself. I'd really love to hear more about how you think about your work as the ground with which to build your self-awareness, your skill, your leadership skills, and to create the impact that you want to create in the world.
Yeah, I suppose it's like we have 25 team members. We've got 230 clients. We've got now a big focus on my part of the business is not too much day to day, but it's PR, it's people, and it's strategy. And so if I can create one of the best places to work in the world for people, if we can have structures in place, like I look at Basecamp and what they've done, and the founder Jason Freud, and like those guys are just incredible what they've done, and they've pioneered kind of the tech, kind of self-funded kind of startup. They had profit share for a while with their employees. They pay their employees incredibly well. We actually got the head of strategy give us advice on product strategy. We've incorporated the jobs to be done philosophy in our product strategy. So that was really useful. And I get really enthusiastic about companies like Southwest Airlines, which a lot of their values are underdoing the competition and being profitable from word go. And it's not about just looking for an exit for Publist. It's about creating like it's a self-funded business, so not answerable to anyone else. Just do what we think is the best way to go down. Obviously, you've got responsibility to your clients and to the team, but that's it. So you can create this kind of journey, and I can use this as a platform to share my experiences. I never want to share a gospel and say, this is what you should do. All I can say is this is what has worked out for me and my team. And I want to create incredible wealth for our team. I want to create autonomy. I want them to have fun. I often thought about going out and maybe being an advisor or being a consultant to companies and let them do it. But again, you're saying this is what you should do. This is what you should incorporate in the business. But if I have a working example, because most of the time you spend most of your time at work, really, that's what most of the population do. So if you can create an environment where your work is fun and invigorating and you can share that with the rest of the world, maybe it's an impact that other companies can have, that they can go, there's a lot of businesses already doing this. It's give autonomy to employees. I've got so many friends that just are punching the numbers at work, go to work and they say lockdown is great because they can just do like 2 hours a day because they don't have to do much more work. But their brain maybe isn't getting challenged enough in those kind of environments. So maybe it's a change in I can maybe foster a change in the doing that. And maybe we create different products, maybe create going to different industries or something like that you can create that change as well. So look, I'm not really too sure, to be honest with you, Adam. I'm just trying to improve myself and try to do the best the way I think it is. And if that's an opportunity to teach people the right way of doing things and take responsibility of their lives, and that way, maybe you can create a bit of PR about being on this podcast with you, about doing other similar type of podcasts, that it's not all about making the most money possible. That seems to fuel corporate America. It's not like I lived in America and I didn't like that when people judge you about where you went to school. People judge you about what social class you're in, how much money you have. Like, I don't have any care for any of that kind of stuff. And maybe if there's more people creating businesses that share wealth with the team and share, it's not all about the end result. Like, people ask me, and even the team asked me, like, what's the end result here, Colin? What do you want to do? And I just go like, look, I'm still figuring it out, but I just focus on trying to improve, and trying to improve the value that we create for our customers is the most important thing. And if we're adding value to our customers, I want to add value to more customers. So that means getting more customers, yes, but I want to do it in a conscious way. And I want to make sure that every team member that we bring on this journey with us is adding value, and they're adaptable, they're changeable, they're all the right values that we need to get us where we want to go. Because if you have one bad egg on the bus, it sets the business totally back. So recruitment is so important to doing those kind of things. Yeah, and I don't know if I really answered your question about where it can have the impact on the world, but I definitely think it's like maybe being a school teacher or something like that. If you have a lot of kids that come every year, you can have an impact and you can help their lives. I've written a few articles, and I wrote one article a few weeks ago about my constant struggle with digital screens, and I make money through people clicking on ads. So this is a constant battle with me. I'm trying to align the spiritual kind of practice, not being on social media, not being on my phone, whereas I make money through that. Yeah, it's a total contradiction. But if I'm not out there saying that it is, like you maybe watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix, it's scary what is going on out there. And it's definitely, like, I really do like to create a good user experience for the users of websites. I want to have a targeted advertisement that works and adds value to their internet experience. I am not a big believer of big flashy ads and manipulation and getting revenue growth in the short term. It's about long-term creation and ongoing adding value. And I definitely not an advocacy of spending more time online. The average person spends 4 hours online now. That's a lot. If I'm using a business hat and I'm saying, oh, that's great, I want people to spend more online. I don't. I definitely want people to be enjoying their life and being out in nature and doing all those good things, rather than spending too much time online. Like, the internet has made massive efficiencies in our lives. Previously, you would have had to go to the bank to do stuff. You stand in line to get there. Now you can do it in a couple of minutes on your mobile phones, for instance, and those have been massively useful. But I definitely don't want to get totally obsessive with more money and more going through that. I think it's not the right thing to do. It goes back down to that, back down to the values.
Yeah. So with regards to this idea of building wealth, this podcast is all about financial independence, but creating a life that you love and pursuing financial independence in a way that you're doing it mindfully. You're not in a rush to get there. What does pursuing financial independence mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I suppose when you start the business, you definitely see the sun and the stars, and you say, wow, it's incredible to have a couple of $1 million or sell the business or do those things like that. But what I found over the years is that the wealth I have created is not much in my pocket anymore, that's for sure. Hopefully that's going to change. But it's definitely wealth of friendships I have made. I know it sounds corny, but like I have incredible clients that are friends. We lost a client last week and working with 6 years, and they're still incredibly good friends because I'm so grateful to them for giving us the opportunity when I was a small business starting out. And then there's other partners, there's people at Google, Pubmatic, Rubicon, all these kind of people are great people, and you learn so much from them. And then there's other entrepreneurs you meet along the way, and I can literally go to any city in the world. Basically, I could visit a client, I could visit a partner, I could visit a competitor. All this kind of stuff is just incredible. That's wealth to me. I did a jobs to be done philosophy. Don't know if you're aware that the product philosophy, jobs to be done. So it's basically revolving around a job rather than a persona. So for instance, you have an option to go for lunch. You could get a smoothie, you could get a sandwich, or you could get a salad. So it's all about satisfying that job that you hire the product to do. So I built that for myself, and the jobs to be done philosophy I have is that I want to grow. I want to have an impact on anything I learn, that I want to reciprocate that to the rest of my team and maybe the rest of my clients. But I also want to be able to be in a financial position to do whatever I want in terms of experience. So if Ireland are in the World Cup final, which I don't know will ever happen, but I want to be there. And if it costs me $50,000, I want to be there. Those are the kind of things I like in life. And just to be able to experience any of that. I'm not a material possession kind of person. I fancy dinners. I prefer a home cooked meal rather than anything else, or a takeaway of Portuguese chicken is very good too. I don't anyway think about spending money. I don't have a flash card, or it doesn't interest me, any of that kind of stuff. Just experiences interest me. Going out to visit you and your baby or something like that, and having the financial independence to be able to do that is something that I'd really focus on. So I suppose when I started out, it was just about getting a job that I enjoyed, and it's still about that. And I think if you focus on the wealth creation side of things, it's a bad angle to focus on from my experience, because if I'm just thinking about the customer and creating more value for them, it's like what I said to the team, you focus on the process, you focus on refining the process and the structure rather than the goals, rather than the financial rewards, rather than the end result. So I don't really think about the financial independence or sorry, I know your podcast is about that, but I don't really think too much about that, to be honest with you, Adam.
It sounds like you're enjoying the process, right? Like this idea of craftsmanship has come up a few times, right? Focusing on the process, honing your skills, getting better a little bit by little bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I know that you fancy yourself a doer, right? Like you have an idea of what you want to create or what you want to do, and you just go and do it. I have the idea, and then I think about it a lot, and then some more, and then some more, and then maybe I do something, right? But I really do resonate a lot with this idea of craftsmanship and aspire. I'm an aspiring craftsman, but I'd love to hear just how you think about that in improving yourself, right?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to that other thing about financial independence for 1 second. I just have a thought on that. It's not that I don't worry about like buying a house for my family or making sure that we're financially stable, because I keep getting from my wife, are we going to get money out of the business now? And I say, oh no, we're just going to put some more money into the business and we'll be okay. So I definitely have worries about that. And if the business kind of folded up in a couple of weeks' time or something happened or there's some kind of change, it's definitely a worry. But again, I suppose it just goes back into your headspace at the time. And if you continue the process, you'll get there in the end. And it's that mindset of just, it's all going to work out in the end. And it's because I'm putting good energy out in the world. I'm being a good person and doing all that kind of stuff. But there's moments when something happens, some trigger point, you lose a customer or someone is going to leave the business or the product fails or competitor takes you 2 customers in 2 days or something like that. And you just go, oh, shit, yeah, I'm really worried about this. But it goes back to that spiritual mindfulness again. So that's what I was going to say about that. But in the doing aspect, I would just say, Adam, I've always had that. I'm pretty stupid that I just don't think about things about too much. And I lack a bit of foresight, I would say. So it can have positives and negatives. We've been guilty in the business of not planning things out. And sometimes it works for us, sometimes it doesn't. And you just have to be comfortable in making those mistakes because as we scale up the business, our processes and structures within the business currently are not where we want them to be at all. They're pretty poor, I would say. So it's only in the last while that we've tried to improve that or say it's about the process, it's about the craftsmanship. It's really only in the last 6 months when we've gone through that bit of a change with Publish 2.0 and figuring out our values and our product philosophy side of things. That's only been something that we've figured out in the last couple of months, really. Well, myself and Tobin have always had doer kind of attitudes. So it's always been part of, we just roll up our sleeves and get things done. And that's to the detriment of scaling sometimes because we'll always come in and save the day and quench fires. If something's wrong with a customer, we'll come in rather than another team member dealing with it because we just know how to do it. And it's always been the case. But I suppose, I just don't think about the repercussions of doing stuff and very impulsive, I would say. I'd say I'm very in tune with my intuition as well. And from meditation, going into intuition, feelings, maybe feelings not as much for me, but intuition, if I have an idea, if I have a thought, emotional intelligence is high with me, I will just go do it and I'll back myself and deal with the consequences if it's wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've always known that about you and just watching you build the business, right? From the very beginning, right? 3 weeks later, you're like, all right, quit my job. I'm doing this. I'm like, what? Good on you. I think for me, just like in starting things, right? This podcast, right? This is something that didn't exist this time last year. And there was a long period of time where I was thinking about doing it. And I have a tendency to jump ahead to what are all the things I'm going to need to know when it's this big podcast, right? And it's like, it's literally not even a podcast yet. So why
I'll negotiate your deal with Spotify, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like what am I worried about that far ahead? But what I found in doing this is that there's so much learning and growth that comes from just taking that step and then that next step, reaching out to you saying, hey, do you want to be on the podcast? Okay. Then we schedule it. Now we're doing it. Then it's going to come out on Tuesday, right? Like you take one step and then the next step becomes obvious. And if I take the time to take a step back and look at, oh, wow, look at all that I've done, right? I've had 8 or 9 episodes. I've gotten this much progress. I've learned how to do this. Like it's pretty cool. And that gives me energy and encouragement to keep going. And for me, that's really helpful. So I'm trying to be more of a doer. That's really I'm in this program called the Inner MBA. And I had to pick a learning goal. And my learning goal is I want to take more action in my life because of that thing, right? As I start to take the steps, I start to find new opportunities as I walk down the path. And it's cool to get your thoughts on that. So let's shift gears into what I call the Mindful Fire Final 4. And so the first question is, what is your top tip for those getting started with meditation and mindfulness?
I think it's always good to have a buddy. You were my original buddy, but I had I still have a buddy, Will, who was down that mindfulness path with me. And we always discuss it and keeping accountability. I think another thing is some great apps out there like Headspace that give you those guided meditations. And that's so important, I think, the guided meditations at the start, because you really don't know what you're doing. And be very thankful to yourself for making the time to do anything. And I think it's starting off doing that will spark something, and everyone's on their own journey. You can do yoga, you can do mindfulness through eating, you can do mindfulness through playing tennis. It's about doing those things that create your present moment. Like, I think we spoke about Michael Jordan's documentary, The Last Dance. I've got Phil Knight's book on my desk there that I'm going to read. I think Phil Knight, is that the name of the coach?
Is it Phil Jackson?
Phil Jackson, sorry. So
no worries. That was a guess.
Incredible what they were doing in terms of mindfulness. But Jordan was just so in the now, so in the present moment. And that's what set him apart from everyone else. He wasn't consumed by the mind. So you can do it in all walks of life. You can stare at a flower, do all this kind of stuff that is very interesting. And I think it's good to, if you get a bit of something out of it, reading some books like The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, this kind of stuff. And it just sets off different things in everyone's head. But I'd say that the apps like Headspace or Calm or these kind of stuff are really good tools, I reckon.
And I'll also mention that I post guided meditations as well for free every other week. So this week we'll have an interview, this one, and then next week we'll have a meditation and so on and so forth. Definitely recommend getting started with Headspace. That's been very helpful for many people, but also we have some available as well. Second question is, what is your top tip for those who are pursuing financial independence?
I would say just go and do it if it's hard to. I think you're doing a good approach though, Adam, to be honest with you. I think the side hustle is the best kind of approach because it keeps your kind of security and build it to a stage of, I'm an all-in kind of person. It's very black and white with me. But if you can do something where you're working and then you're doing your side hustle and then your side hustle becomes big enough that you don't have to work, that's an incredible amount of our clients. A lot of our clients run kind of puzzle websites or coupon sites or something like that. And they would have been software engineers at a corporation. And then they just made so much money from AdSense that they went and did their own thing.
Yeah, that's really definitely how I'm thinking about it. I have my day job, which is providing the financial means to work towards financial independence, allows me to save and live a nice life without having to worry too much and invest and grow that. And at the same time, I'm able to explore these areas of purpose and passion for me that are aligned with my values. Things like teaching Search Inside Yourself within Google and leading meditations every Tuesday at Google and doing the podcast, right? So it's like the podcast is really my foray into what might I want to do after I retire early from Google, right? Do I think maybe I want to teach mindfulness. Let's talk to some people who teach mindfulness and see if they like doing it, right? And what are the pros and the cons? And then talk to people who are just living life that intentionally and what they're focused on, like you building this business, right? You're looking at building this business as a path of personal growth and development, right? That's really what it's all about, right? Growing and learning and creating opportunity is certainly in my mind. And so how can I test the waters while still having that financial security? And then also, how can I bring more of that into my day-to-day work at Google, right? It doesn't need to be either or, right? I think you said that one of your friends said, why does it have to be one or the other? Why don't you bring both together? And so that's really what I'm trying to do. So the third question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
What advice would I give to my younger self? Just remember that it's all going to work out in the end. And that's the advice I give to myself every day. It's all going to work out. Don't worry too much about the small things.
Perfect. And the final question is, how can people get in touch and find what you're working on online?
LinkedIn is probably the best thing for that. It's the social media I use for the business and put out a good bit of stuff in there and what we're doing and what kind of focus on. So yeah, I think that's the best area.
Very good. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And I'll also link to your website, which I believe is publift.com, right?
Yeah, sure. And if anyone wants to reach me via email, my email's on LinkedIn, colm@publift.com. I'm happy to have a discussion or give advice anywhere or help anywhere I can.
Very good. This has been awesome, Colm. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Adam. And it's incredible what you're doing, the impact you're having in doing those meditations every bi-weekly and this podcast. And fair play to you. It's great to see. And the mindfulness path is definitely it's a fantastic way to do it. And how you're helping other people at Google and outside of Google is great. So well done and keep on doing it. Thank you very much for having me.
My
Really
pleasure,
appreciate it.
dude.
And let's hope we can see each other in the not too distant future.
Let's do it, dude. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Mindful Fire podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this. This just lets the platforms know you're getting value from the episodes and you want to be here when I release additional content. If you're ready to start your Mindful Fire journey, go to mindfulfire.org/start and download my free envisioning guide. In just 10 minutes, this guide will help you craft a clear and inspiring vision for your life. Again, you can download it for free at mindfulfire.org/start. Thanks again, and I'll catch you next time on the Mindful Fire podcast.